Well, it's finally happened. The boy is back in town. Welcome back to Celtic, Kieran Tierney. Hello there and welcome back to Celtic World Order. As always, I'm Steve O'Mar and it's a warm welcome to yourself back to the channel for this wee video. The breaking news, if you will. I say breaking news. We all knew it was going to happen, but we were waiting anxiously. It felt like it was the long drawn out story so far to this opening of the summer window. But finally, we've got that announcement video. We've seen those pictures. We've had that initial interview and that is it. That is all we need to know because Kieran Tierney, the return of the prodigal son, the boy is back in town. We have a bona fide world-class left-back back at the club. However, we also have a big gaping hole because he is the only one that we have at the club. But let's not let that dampen our spirits. We'll talk about Kieran's return. Talk about what that might mean for who's going to be backing him up in the season. And of course, there's some other news because it looks as if a young striker will be coming and joining the ranks of Celtic from down south via Fulham. We'll get in about that, but before we do, as always, the wee bit of housekeeping at the start. You know the score by now. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much. We really appreciate your continued support. And if you're new to our channel, it's a welcome to yourself. Just make sure you hit that bell icon, get yourself notified, and more importantly, hit the subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing to subscribe to Celtic World Order podcast, but it helps us a lot by getting the word out there, growing the community as we push towards the 2,000 mark. We want to try and break through that for the new season. If you want to get us elsewhere, we're on X at CWOpod 1888. We're on Spotify, on the move. If you want to catch up, we're on Blue Sky, and we are on TikTok if that is your bag. And it seems that it's the bag of many because TikTok is blown up. So thanks to everybody, no matter how you support Celtic World Order podcast. So, as we always say here, let's get in about it. Let's get right down to business. It is, of course, we know the score. KT is back in the building and he's going to be wearing that iconic number 63. We saw that nice wee video where he got the presentation box and he pulled it out and there it is, 63. You couldn't write it, of course. It's going to be a blockbuster, isn't it, in terms of sales? And the people at the superstore will be running out of KT prints by the end of the week. We all know that, but that is only a sideshow because it is about what this man's going to bring on the park, what he's going to bring in the dressing room, what he's going to bring way of mentality, winning spirit, and of course, hopefully, we get somebody alongside him, somebody that he can pass on all his knowledge. But he comes to us in the absolute prime of his career at 28 years of age, with the level of trajectory that he's had, where he's came from. He came from Arsenal. We know that there was a lot of interest in Kieran Tierney. He's been abroad as well. He had that loan period at Sociedad. He pretty much could have taken his pick up any team. Let's not kid yourself on there. That is 100% the case here. Kieran Tierney has came back much like Brendan Rodgers for the love of the game, so to speak, for the love of the club, wanting to be there. Is the perfect fit for him. It's the perfect time for him to come back, and he signs a 5-year deal. So he has given us arguably the best years of his career. If all goes according to plan, he'll be 33, the ripe old age of 33, so we still pretty much potentially a lot of football left in his legs, but he's not coming back as a sort of pension plan. He's not coming back in the late twilight just to tick that box to come back. He's coming back when he can very much offer us a lot on the park and level us up, particularly when we look towards Europe. And if you don't believe me, well, you know about his past experiences at Celtic, and look at what he's done at Arsenal. You only have to look at the reaction of the Arsenal fans who really feel like they have let something slip here, that they have let one through the net, and that the club were foolish to not either cash in on him and get some proper money for him, or indeed keep him around, because he's been playing a lot recently for them in the Champions League. They've even been playing him out on the left wing, so he's very, very versatile, and they are very upset and sad to see him go, but he moves on with their best wishes. And the loss of Arsenal, well, it's very much the gain of Celtic. So, Kieran Tierney, what can we say about him? What do you not already know about him? But in case you didn't, here's the wee recap. Of course, he made his way into the team 2015 at the young age of 17. Remember that wee skinny guy with the spike and he looked a bit gangly and a bit awkward? Well, came into the team and he took to it like a duck to water. took his chance, seized his chance, but then he played a lot of football. People will say, well, maybe a bit cynically, that some of his injuries problems is because we played him too long, too often, too hard. But, that's the kind of guy he is. Very much, I would say, don't shoot me here in the Danny McGrain mould. Hard in the tackle, committed, gets himself about the field. That is the kind of old school defender that Tierney is. But there's been an evolution of his style. We've seen him become very much a polished player. He still has traditional, quote unquote, left back qualities. He's not really this inverted sort of midfielder that we've seen in recent times at Celtic through Greg Taylor. However, don't kid yourself on. Kieran Tierney can play any position at the left back if we want. We can even move him into centre, the defence if we need to. And of course, as we've seen at Arsenal, we can play him on the wing. He's very much rounded out his game. But one thing that he does is he's direct, he's energetic, as I say, he's hard in the tackle, and he's also got a damn good delivery. And by the way, that's been something that we have been lacking in terms of our production down the side for a long, long time. Taylor, okay at times, but undoubtedly, Kieran Tierney is going to give us so much more attacking threat and definitely 100% a lot more security at the back. We've said this before in the podcast, also throws it out. We could go mental. We could even consider playing 3 at the back with Kieran Tierney. That is how versatile he is going to be for the club and for the manager moving forward. In terms of his time in his first stint at Celtic, well, it was 170 appearances, 8 goals to show for it, and 10 major trophies. And of course, that included 3 trebles. Wow. He left at the top of his game. He comes back, Celtic back at the top of our game once again. People will talk about his time at Arsenal, and there's this perception that it's been injury ravaged. Now, I'll be honest, we have sampled that on here. We've gave you the stats previously. I'm not going to bore you with that. And he has had at points quite significant periods out with various injuries. However, over his piece, since he moved down there in 2019, he's had 144 appearances for the Gunners, 6 goals and 14 assists. Bear in mind as well, he had a period at Sociedad, and people say, didn't do anything at Sociedad, didn't play, hardly was playing. Absolute nonsense. He made the squad 33 times, playing 26, no goals to show for it, but 2 assists, and that brings his overall career total is 342 appearances at club level, 14 goals, excuse me, and 53 assists. Not bad numbers for a guy that's apparently always injured, is it? Now, of course, we all know that he withdrew from the Scotland squad there and he was injured. I've not really heard much around about the ins and outs of this injury, and call me a wee bit sort of sceptical, but there was 2 videos to be recording, wasn't there? Did he just perhaps drop out of the Scotland squad under the guise of injury because he had these signing announcements to do? Because it certainly didn't look like something that had been done before the time I was away with the Scotland squad. Hopefully that is the case. And if it is the case, then it means that we could well see him in that friendly against Newcastle as his first game. That would be a perfect occasion to get his second debut at Celtic Park. Fantastic game. Now, with all the good that comes with one high quality left back coming into the building, we know that there's a big void because our other 2 options are out there in the ether. The first being, of course, Greg Taylor, the much maligned Greg Taylor, and a lot more news has come out with regards to it. It seems like this one's really in a state of flux. All indications at the turn of the week there were stating that today he was going to be officially announced at PAOK, and that was going to be sealed and delivered. That may have come out at the time of recording this. We're quite late on, but at this moment in time, there doesn't appear to be any real confirmation around him having signed. But we do know the details, at least, of that. It's 2 years on the table with the option of a further year there. The word close to the street is that he is going through it, really thinking this one over as his child has just been born. What's that going to mean for family life? What's that going to mean for a lifestyle? Well, apart from son and lots of money, there's more to it than that, as we well know. You need to settle, and particularly if you're going to be bringing your child up in its early years in a foreign country, you've got to tick all the boxes, make sure everything is there. But in terms of wages, if it's to be believed, it's 20,000+ a week, potentially as much as 25,000 a week. Now, that is lofty money. Taylor himself, he is at ages with Kieran Tierney. He is 27. There's a couple of months, give or take, behind him. But he's got to sort of iron that out. And it's said that when he'd offered the deal at Celtic, people were saying he wants to be guaranteed first team football. But a lot of it, if we are being honest, will be to do with money, and that you shouldn't hold that against the guy. This is pretty much going to be his prime contract, his last sort of big contract. You know, if you're looking at 3 years, it's going to be 30, maybe could want to touch a 31. Still plenty of time to play at various clubs, but there's ultimately going to be some potential level of drop down there. Now, information has come out at the time of being at Celtic, he was on 12,000 a week, which isn't bad money. Do you know what? I'd snap your hand off for it, but you can understand as a guy who's been a mainstay in the squad, he's been ever present, that he's expecting something a bit more. Word again on the street was he was wanting in the bracket that 20,000 to 25,000, which, you know, you make your mind up. Let me know in the comments below. Is keeping Taylor around for 20,000 to 25,000, is that something you'd be happy with, knowing you know exactly what you're getting, or do you think it's a wee bit lofty for him? Apparently, use the term apparently, Celtic offered them around about 15,000 a week, which would have brought him up to, believe it or not, the same earnings as our 6 million sort of misfit centre half at the moment, Austin Trusty. That was obviously rejected, and PAOK have came to him with a far better package, and that is well much under consideration. Now, that begs the question, with him pretty much looking as if he is set to move on, we also had Jeffrey Schlupp on. Now, if you look at his wages down south, that was said to be in about the 60 grand bracket. We obviously get him on loan, and you would be paying a portion, at least probably up to half. So you can easily say he would have been on 25, maybe 30,000 a week at Celtic. Was it worth it? Well, remains to be seen. Personally, I thought he started quite well. He looked like he had a lot to offer, and then he very, very petered off, slowed up, and it really there was diminishing returns from him there. He's another guy that's been in the equation for keeping around, but again, would I pay that money, say 20,000 to 25,000 a week for Jeffrey Schlupp? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't pay that for him. Would I pay it for Greg Taylor? Probably, because I think that Celtic do need an option, and no matter what you think of Taylor, no matter what I've said about Taylor before, I do still think that from a domestic standpoint, to rotate him in and out, he has a steady enough option for the vast majority of games. But then that begs the question, does he level us up? Well, no, he doesn't. Kieran Tierney levels us up, but we also need high quality fullbacks, and I still do think that the drop off between Tierney to Taylor would be notable, because at times we found ourselves wanting the defensive position, particularly, again, no disrespect to the man, at that left back position, when we really needed to pick it up, bring somebody on, or replace him with higher quality. We didn't get that. Jeffrey Schlupp was apparently going to be that guy, and it didn't really quite work out that way. Now, would I keep him around for the offered 15 that was put out there to Taylor? Well, yeah, I would keep Jeffrey Schlupp there as an option, but I think no matter what, if he were to stick around, I think Taylor is gone. That's dead in the water, and hopefully it is. Not because I want rid of him in particular, but I don't want to be one of these ever dragging on sort of summer sagas that doesn't have to be. We've spoke about him enough. I think we draw a line under it. But would I keep Schlupp around as a utility option? Yes, I would, on cheap and right wages, because he is also getting on in his time. But likewise, I'm pretty sure that he'll have offers for the likes of Saudi, maybe even the MLS, where he could make a heavy wage. Ultimately, it'll be up to him, and it will tell you a lot about what he wants to do as a footballer. But that brings us on to filling up that gap, doesn't it? And is it going to be one of these two guys? We spoke about it here. Obviously, the first one on the left there is Harley Mills from Peterborough. Now, a very young prospect. Both these guys that are on there, Kia Takasugi and Harley Mills, are both very young prospects. However, that is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be doing. If you have Kieran Tierney, much like we look at what Schmeichel has brought to the sort of backup goalie situation with Sinisalo, and now it'll be Duhan as well, as we know, that is going to be a great learning tree to sit under. Now, in terms of Harley Mills, he is out of contract on the 30th of this month. So we've mentioned this before. This is a very, very low cost option for Celtic to go for. Playing his trade at Peterborough, League One. The sample size is small. It's 20 appearances, 2 goals and 2 assists. However, he has been a standout for them. And if this Mr. Tisdale, the football doctor, is said to be looking out there and scouring the up and down the UK and beyond for the brightest, youngest talents that we can snap up, that can really level us up and have great level for growth, great potential with minimum risk, then this sounds perfect, because this would be very much in the pocket of being a developmental fee, little to nothing. And if it works out, absolutely fantastic. Now, when it comes to Kasugi on the right-hand side there, that is a different story. That's a 19-year-old left back, Japanese left back at Djurgården, the Swedish league. Now, that report came out a wee while ago, and we spoke about it with Spirici Soccer over in Japan. Pretty well respected, circa 18,000 followers on their social media account. So plenty of weight behind him at least. And they have also mentioned that he has interest coming his way from PSG and Atalanta. However, as we said on that show, big teams doesn't guarantee that you're going to fit into their squad. Now, in terms of Celtic, we definitely, in my opinion, offer a far more viable and attractive platform. Yeah, the bright lights at Atalanta and PSG, France and Italy respectively, that could blur your vision, but you've got to say how much chances you're going to get. Now, you could also argue that and say, well, if you're good enough, you will play. Of course, that is always going to be the case. But when you look at the wealth of talent that they've got already, game time could be limited. Coming to Celtic, however, it is more than likely, if you're getting signed, and if you're getting signed for good money, because the purported fee to prize him away from Djurgården said to be around about, they're wanting about 5 million plus, 5.5, maybe £6 million. If we're putting down that kind of money, well, you better believe that we're going to be giving you some level of game time. And as I say as well, we win trophies, can offer European football, and of course, you're going to be, yes, an understudy, but you're going to be learning and playing along some great professionals, the likes of Callum McGregor, the likes of Schmeichel, the likes of, obviously, Kieran Tierney, and that in itself is going to be appealing. And of course, as well, there could be a lot to say about the Japanese contingent already in place at Celtic right now, and he can be looking at and thinking from an international standpoint, what could that do for me coming to a team like Celtic? And before, we don't want to sell ourselves as Stepping Stone FC, but Celtic are undoubtedly a brilliant shop window and a brilliant springboard if you want to come and ply your trade and learn there. And you only have to look at some of the success stories that have moved on from Celtic. Kieran Tierney being one of them, but look at Jeremy Frimpong. These are always going to be at the back of these young guys' minds coming into Celtic. And if that's something that we can use as a wee bit of leverage to get that quality in, then I think we should do it. Now, personally speaking, on top of Kieran Tierney already in the building, I think if we are interested in both Mills and Kosciuszko, I think we should be going off both of them. Now, that sounds mental, I know. Steve-O, when does Celtic ever do that level of planning? Give yourself a slap. But if Celtic want to level up and show that they're serious, they need to go out and get this. There's 2 guys here. We've got one who's been playing at a decent level over in Sweden. He has experience there in terms, he's got a wee bit of, Conference League experience in Europe, so not too bad. Again, the sample size is small with 44 career appearances, 5 goals and 2 assists, but he is playing at a decent standard and he has that European experience. He could be I would imagine, your at least immediate understudy to Kieran Tierney. But again, as I say, with the versatility of Tierney, there's nothing to say you can't bring Tierney in to the centre, the defence, and play the likes of Kosciuszko if he turned out to be coming to Celtic and good enough at left back. So I would have them as your 1-2. But Mills, again, if there's anything about him from a young talent standpoint, then you need to get him in and snap up young talent, and that would give us a nice gradual stepping stone. And that is a kind of forward planning that's been sorely lacked to Celtic for a long time, but is definitely something that is needed. Now, in terms of other news, of course, you'll have seen this. Could another Dembele situation be on the cards for Celtic? Well, don't jump down my throat, because I know that the two things aren't the same. But of course, what we're talking about here is Callum Osmond, the 19-year-old young Welsh striker who is coming to Celtic from Fulham. The reports have been coming out that Celtic had made initial contact, that a medical had been booked, and it is now snowballed with Anthony Joseph and Sky Sports reporting that is pretty much signed, sealed, delivered, and will be announced in due course. Medical booked, medical done, so on and so forth. Now, I said, could it be a Dembele situation? Do not mix up the two, as I say, because they are very much polar opposites in terms of where they are at their career and where they are at their Fulham career at the time of moving to Celtic potentially for Callum Osmond versus where Dembele was when he did move to Celtic. However, the one thing that they do share in common is that it would cost Celtic pretty much that. Well, it would cost us a developmental fee, but as we know, with Dembele, you're talking about £500,000. Not too bad, is it? So, who is Callum Osmond? Well, he is, as I just said, a young Welsh striker. At this moment in time, he's been at Fulham there for all his days, and he's had 73 career appearances at all levels, so from the youth up until where he is now. He's still in the B squad, don't get that wrong. 43 goals and 12 assists. So he's doing well in terms of his time on the field, his goals, and his goal involvement. He's had 32 of those appearances coming in the Premier League 2. He hasn't actually played for the team proper at this moment in time, and the rest of his appearances are from the various youth levels at Fulham. Now, as I say, the key thing here is it's a developmental fee. So again, much like I was saying with Mills, it is very, very low risk with great potential upshot. Now, we're sitting here and talking about bringing in guys for development. The interesting thing that's come out about the one with Osmond here is they are saying that Brendan Rodgers likes the talent, he likes what he sees, the reports are good on him, and he sees him as, wait for it, coming into the squad, first team, not for the B squad, not to be running about playing in the Lowland League and playing plumbers and stank lifters and stuff like that. They want in and around the main team. Now that falls back to what we were discussing when it was supposedly meant to be Rocco Vata was going to be taking up that void. And of course, we then ended up with Kyogo, Ida and Maeda moving in. And it never really moved on for there, did it? Now, of course, we had Cummings in our youth squad who has went to West Ham. And I can see that some people raise their eyebrow and say, well, what does that say about us? We're looking at guys like Mills, we're looking at guys like Osmond, young talent from down south. Why are we letting the likes of Doak go and Cummins go and, you name the rest of them that have went over the years? Why are we not developing and nurturing our own talent? And yes, that is another conversation for another day. I'm sure we could go down that rabbit hole many, many times. But at the same time, we knew this was going to be the case with Tisdale coming in. We always knew that the search for young talent was pretty much going to be Eurocentric, maybe English-centric, and it was going to be focused on those markets that they know. And they have, well, at least Tisdale has had a decent hit rate in the past at his various other clubs. So if he can bring that, and this is us going to see the summer of Tisdale, where we're going to actually start to see some of whatever these prescriptions that he should have been long overdue in writing coming to the fore, then I'm happy with that. But as I say, let's reflect back onto the people that are instantly comparing it with Dembele, because please do temper your expectations and get that out of your head, because at Dembele at this moment in time, he's not. Yes, they'd be both coming to us at roughly the same age. However, Dembele had 64 senior appearances at Fulham, 19 goals and 9 assists by the time he came up to Celtic, having kicked off from the 13 to 14 season. He played in the Premiership, he played in the Championship, and he had FA Cup time on the field for them. And he also had an additional 16 appearances for Fulham at youth level. Dembele was a bit of a perfect storm for Celtic. He was a guy that was in and around their team, but they found themselves in the Championship at that time. And of course, with the various riches that they've got, even at that level, he was still getting regular game time, but it wasn't a first choice pick. And for whatever reason, as we see at various clubs, they let this clock run down on his contract. And Celtic were there to come in, offer, as I say, that platform, that shop window, that potential springboard, and that's how we got him. Now, that's not to say that Callum Osmond can't be another Dembele story, but all I'm saying is temper your expectations, because people are instantly just looking at the club, looking at the age, looking at the developmental fee thing, and putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 7. But as I say, looking at him, he's soaring at his level, and that's the most important thing. And what I would say as well, though, about the Premier League 2, and I've said this time over again, think of some of the guys that we have had come to our club that have been playing at Premier League 2 level. And Cham, no matter what you want to say about Cham, first season was phenomenal and then he had real ups and downs, but he looked very much like a fully developed player by the time he arrived at Celtic. Look at Jeremy Frimpong. Yes, a bit raw. Even when he left, there's still room for development, but look at where he went to. That's the thing. I've always sang the praises of Celtic looking at youth academies. Folk would knock the standard of the Premier League 2 and the Man City connection that we used to have. Think again of Boyata. Again, no matter what you want to think about Dedrick Boyata, look at what he eventually became and look at what he went and done. Yes, it's starting to drop off a wee bit there. But again, Jason Denayer, I need to keep on giving you names. The point is, down in the Premier League, all these clubs go and they get at the very best young talent and nurture it from a very early age. Now, unlike perhaps our academy and some of the other academies in and around Scotland that, let's be honest, kind of play at it, everything at these Premier League teams is class leading. They learn to be a professional, live, breathe, eat and sleep professionalism and being a professional footballer from a very, very early age. World-class basics, it says, in the Celtic dressing room. Well, they're getting that and then some down at these clubs. They are so far advanced in terms of their academies, their procedures, their training methods, their analytics, their physios, their health, you name it, they are class leading. And the one thing that you can definitely note about Callum Osmond is he will be getting possibly the best football upbringing that he could possibly be getting if he's to come to Celtic and be a success. He'll have had all the tools and all the foundations put in place to know exactly what it is to expect to play at an elite level. Now, one thing that I would say is the Premier League level 2 is it as good as the Scottish Premier League? Well, that's up for debate. Probably not, you would say. However, there was undoubtedly, look at some of the amazing talents that came through various clubs down south. And as I say, they have the best and brightest young talents all playing against it. So the real competition level will be fierce. Now, the one thing that you cannot get from Premier League 2 experience is the pressure of playing for a big club like Celtic and the fans, the noise, the full stadiums, the expectation. You can't replicate that. That's something that you've either got in here, and you can deal with that. But in terms of the football upbringing, the tactical side of things, he should be very well polished. He should have been brought in to standard where he'll be coming in and he'll be far and away better than a lot of our talents, if not all of them, that are in our youth academy at this moment in time. I would probably, put a right good bet on that being the case. So I'm optimistic for that standpoint. But as I say, the one thing that you cannot replicate will be the noise, the expectation, and full stadiums. That you will not get that from Premier League 2, but you will get a high standard of competitive football. Definitely miles and miles ahead of what our youth teams are playing in this Lowland League. So, Callum Osmond all looks like he's coming in, meant to be coming into the first team squad. Now, that again begs a question. What about Johnny Kenny? Well, there's talk that he's going to be, unfortunately for him, loaned out. Let me know, what do you think of Johnny Kenny? We've been on here and I quite like the wee flashes that I saw of him, but undoubtedly Celtic need to go and sign another striker. In fact, I'd argue they need two strikers here. Now, of course, everybody wants the big marquee signing, so to speak, Matthias Christegaarden from Brøndby, because that's the one that's been going on for the past 2 seasons since Brendan Rodgers has been in the door. People are pretty much going to nail that one in the mast and say, that is who I want, and if I don't get it, it's absolute crap. Hopefully that is the case. That's going to be a lofty fee, but we should not be shied away with that. I think if we, again, as I say, with the left-back situation, if Celtic are serious, we need to get ourselves out there, and that's something that we need to do. It's something that we need to do. We need to go and show that we want to have a right good quality, strength and depth that you can take off and bring on like for like, particularly when we're looking to try and break into the Champions League. We'll face a qualifier to get there. Very winnable qualifier. But then we know the setup from the Champions League from last year, and we saw how successful and how it worked out for us. We need to go out and make that go in our favour. We need to give ourselves the best possible chance to once again get beyond that group stage. But again, no matter who you play, obviously you want favour of the draw, but no matter who you play, do you have a good and capable squad? Some of the names that were thrown out there on top of Chris the Garden, also there's El Kachati from Telstar, still out in ether. Is that something that's got truth in it? Well, as I say, again, looking at a low-cost option punt, I would be happy to do that because, again, that's a low-cost option. We know we've got the versatility of Maeda. Should he stay about? Hopefully he does. And Ida, no matter what you think of him, with a full pre-season under his belt, you would expect that he will get better as well. But if we bring in young Osmond, that gives us an option. I would highly imagine we wouldn't keep around Johnny Kenny because it starts to get just a wee bit bloated in there. But I would then definitely want to bring in another striking option, one other option. Who that may well be remains to be seen. But Celtic need to be going and getting at least 2 strikers. If Osmond's to be one of them and it's one other, Ida and the option of Maeda, it might not be perfect, but it's a lot more workable. The chat about Kyogo coming back, I don't buy that. We said that the other day. Chuck that one out in the bin, but stranger things have happened. And in terms of other positions, well, we know we still need this number 6. We've been linked with the young Turkish chap. Again, show that you're serious, Celtic. If you want that, go and get him. And another name that's been thrown out there, we talk about young, exciting talent. Lennon Miller, I'll just say it again. Why not? Celtic need to start getting serious. I said it in the last show. I will say it again. Some people said we've no chance of doing it. And I'll be honest with you, the head tells me that that is going to be the case. But I think Celtic need a minimum of 5 players in during this window. And more importantly, we need to get them in early. Get them in, get them bedded in, get ourselves set and ready for this qualifying match for the Champions League. It is imperative that we get that one over the line this time round. Anyway, that is us for right now. As always, if any more things happen, if Osmond does sign, if anybody else signs, we'll be here to cover it. Thanks again for taking the time to watch the channel. Make sure before you go, hit the wee like sign, give us a wee thumbs up, share it if you want to go mental, but more importantly, hit the subscribe button to keep yourself updated. We'll be back with a wee bit more content. Keep your eyes peeled on our social media, keep your eyes peeled on here. Take care of yourselves, and as always, hail, hail.